not be recorded. Okay. And we should be live. Hello everybody.
Hello.
I hope if anyone's watching, can let us know if you can see and hear us in the comments and say, we'll just say hello. So welcome. As always, we've got Gemma from Gemma Books up there, and we've got Alice from Alice and Giant Bookshelf, my co-host for FOMO Book Club, and we've got our lovely special guest today, Katie Lumsden. Welcome, Katie. And if you don't know Katie, she is one of our lovely fellow booktubers, and she's also an author. And her debut book, The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, came out this year, which we were all extremely excited about. So yeah, welcome, Katie. It's lovely to have you on.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Okay. And Berna's here. I could just see in the comments. Hello, Berna.
Hi, Berna.
Right. Quite a few people. So I suppose I should just state quickly that my internet's not the best. So anyone watching, if you see me cut out or judder, it's I have to let my co-hosts take over for a minute. But welcome everyone for joining us. I hope everybody here has had a chance to read the 13th Tale. This is our discussion. Thank you, Robin. Audio and video are good. It's our live discussion of the 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, and this is our 6th and final book of the sort of full 12 months we've done of FOMO Book Club. So if this is our final book of the first 12 months pick, and we picked this one. We thought it'd be a good time of year to read it, October and November, because it would be quite gothic, and it's turned out to be a perfect read for me for October and November. I thought it was September and October. And the reason we've invited Katie along is because, if you don't know, Katie has always said that this is her favourite book, The 13th Tale. So we're going to talk to Katie a bit about her experience of The 13th Tale, and we're going to talk about our thoughts on the book and hopefully take some comments from people in the chat as well. So I'm just going to go over to the chat and see who's joined us. We've got Zach. Hi, Zach. Nadine, hello, and Charlie, and I've put spoiler warning along the bottom as well, because we are going to be having massive spoilers for this book. So here's your warning now, because if you haven't read the book, if you haven't read it, it's a book that, you know, there's a lot of reveals and secrets. So if you haven't read the book and you don't want any spoilers, probably maybe watch this after, like save it till we've finished the chat, until you've read it. So Glenda has said, hi all, did anyone not like the 13th Tale? I just couldn't get into it, but I'll try again depending on comments. Yeah, so Glenda was one who I spotted who hadn't got on with it, but you kind of lightly DNF'd it, Glenda, I think. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what everybody's thoughts were on it. So if you did read it, if you can leave your thoughts in the comments, because we're going to have a little talk about our overall thoughts on the book. So yeah, we'll just start with overall thoughts. First of all, I want to go to my co-host first, because I want to talk to them. It's the first time they've read it. It's the first time I've read it, but Katie's read the book multiple times. Not for a while though, I should point out. But she has read it a number of times, but it's our first time. So Alice, what did you think of it overall?
I absolutely loved it. Like, this is a book that is doing pretty much everything I love in books. Like, apart from an apocalypse, there was pretty much every single box of stuff I love to read about. Just loved the general feeling of bookishness. The author characters is like a big, this book was like total catnip for me, completely from start to finish. And I love a good reveal. There's plenty of reveals in this. I just think that I really loved the characters. I really loved the setting. It was so atmospheric, and I just loved the sort of story within a story type of deal. And it has one of my favourite themes in a book as well, which is twins. So yeah, I am debating if this is my top favourite book of the year, actually. So that's where I stand on it.
So Demon Copperhead might get knocked off the top spot.
Very possibly.
Well, Gemma, what did you think?
I really have to agree with everything Alice said. I thought the bookish quotes and just like the love of reading that was sort of in the pages, it just kind of made me feel seen. Do you know what I mean? I was like, yes, I feel like that. So I really liked all of that side of things. I really liked the dual narrative and the way that it was construed. So the Vida telling her story to what's her name?
Margaret.
Yeah, yeah. There were a lot of characters.
So I really love that as a plot device to sort of discuss it, and I like the way that you saw like the mirroring between Vida's life and Margaret's life throughout. I thought that was really, really well done. Like you, Alice, I thought Angel Fieldhouse. Yeah. I'm doubting myself with everything now. Was just an awesome sort of setup. It's like quintessentially Gothic, isn't it? And I know we'll talk about this later, but it did bring me back to sort of the secrets of Hartwood Hall and like that as a building, as a sort of location to create atmosphere, and you can really see that as a Gothic sort of tool. I thought it worked really well. So yeah, it was a 5-star for me as well. Didn't quite top Demon for me, but it was 5-star.
Yeah, no, I'm completely in agreement. Like again, like Alice, I felt like this had all the sort of elements I want in a book. So, and especially at this time of year when I want to read something a bit Gothic and a bit dark, and I just, and like you, Gemma, I found the structure really fascinating and the different way that the stories were presented. And we had, you know, dual timeline, but we also had like Hester's diary that was found, and different. There's just these different. It's had this elements of mystery, and then Vida Winter's storytelling, the way she sort of tell this story, and we'll get into all of this as we discuss it. But I'd be really interested to hear then your sort of journey with this book, Katie. So your history with the 13th Tale. So yeah, because you're the influence actually that got me to read it, because it was on my list of books when we were putting together the FOMO book club list because of you, because you said it was your favourite. So it'd be good to hear your history with it.
I read it first when I was maybe like 14, 15. So yeah, like 15, 16 years ago. And I just really, really loved it because at that point in time, as a teenager, I basically only read classics. Like I never really read any modern books. But I saw this in a bookshop and I read it, and it was genuinely the first modern book I ever loved, I think. And like all the books that made an impression on me when I was a teenager are all classics, except for the 13th Tale. And that was like the one book that really stood out and that like made a massive impression on me, and that I just absolutely loved. So it's always been my favourite modern novel, I would say, like since then. And I think partly that's because it is a book about someone who loves old books and it's so influenced by classics. So I feel like I just really identify with Margaret because of all of her love of old books as well. And that like the way it begins, and she talks about growing up in a bookshop and like only loving old books, I just like really, really loved as a teenager. And then I've reread it twice or three, maybe 2 or 3 times since then, I would say. I think the last time I read it was maybe like 4 years ago. I was vaguely thinking I would reread it for the FOMO book club, and then Booktober happened instead, so I didn't. But I just love it so much because I think it contains, I think like Alice was saying, it just contains all the stuff I want in a book. Like it's so, like the storytelling elements are so great. There's such a massive love of books in it. It has such a good plot. Like the Gothic atmosphere, the setting is so good. I love the twists and turns. Like I feel like it has the best twist in any book that I've read, and I just really, really love everything about it. Like I just think it's so well done and so entirely my kind of thing, and so I feel like it's always a book I'll like return to. It's just so good.
It's lovely to hear that, because actually it's like, if it's one of those books that had a really early influence on you, they do make an impact on you as a reader and your choices. And it's amazing. It's we'll talk a bit about your book a bit later and about the sort of influence and that it may have had, or the sort of, or any nods to that book that you may have had within The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, because we've all read The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. We won't give any spoilers The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. Just wanted to do it as a recommendation, but just sort of a little description of it later, and maybe talk about the influence a little bit there. So in terms of the comments, I'm just going to put up some comments of what people thought about the book. After Glenda's comment about wondering whether people liked it, she's had to skip out because of spoilers. Berna has said that I read the book about 5 years ago, but I liked it very much and came for the discussion. Zach. Let's see.
Oh, Zach.
Might as well get this out of the way. I gave it 2.25. Oh, Zach. So I'd like to hear about that, actually, though. So it's just, I'm really interested to hear, because I have to say, we've had a lot of our FOMO books have gone down really, really well. I don't think we've had one that was, we've had many that have been, I don't know, kind of split decisions or anything, but this one, there's been a couple of comments where people didn't get on with it, so I'm interested to hear what the why those reasons are, really. Charlie has said, I read it a few years ago too, but I adore it. Has one of my favourite bookish quotes in it. Yes, amazing bookish quotes. Like Gemma was just saying, like, it's really like a love letter to the reader and to the books. And I highlighted loads. So I read it on my Kindle, and I've just got loads of really good quotes that I highlighted. Berna said 8 out of 10 for her. Robin says, I typically read non-fiction, so this is a very different pick for me. I chose to listen to the audiobook and very much enjoyed all of the twists and turns, rated it 4 stars. Yeah, lots of twists and turns. Hello, Paris, Texas. Oh, I nearly missed it. Nearly missed our live. Hi, welcome. Glenda's gone off, signing off to avoid spoilers. So we had overall thoughts on the book, and kind of got some banners and headings, and I think we'll probably overlap with quite a lot of what we talk about, but just thought we might talk about the book in general to start with before we go into the story and the characters. So narrative structure. So Alice, you kind of talked about that a bit at the beginning. So in terms of the structure, what did you think of the structure of the book?
I just loved the idea of the story within the story. And actually, there's more than one story within the story, isn't there? And it's it just felt like it owed so much to like storytelling and this like passing down of this story to somebody else, but like not necessarily for the purposes of it actually ever getting out there or anything. But I also love the fact that it's told in pieces in such a way that you are really, really hooked. Like I couldn't put it down once I'd started reading it, because it was just like, it's just the perfect amount from each person's storyline to make you constantly hooked in and wanting to know what happened next with Vida Winter's story, but also wanting to know what happens next with Margaret. I thought it was absolutely great choice of narrative structure, and I thought it was really well pulled off as well. Like, I think there could be problems with doing a story like that, but for me there wasn't. I just thought it was really, really well carried off.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say about like the life, because all the different lives being interconnected. There was a quote I highlighted. I'll read you. So it was when Vida Winter starts telling her story in the chapter, and So We Began is the chapter, and she says, human lives are not pieces of string that can be separated out from a knot of others and laid out straight. Families are webs, impossible to touch one part of it without setting the rest vibrating, impossible to understand one part without having a sense of the whole. So she starts out with saying, and like you said, Alice, you get a little bit of this person's story, then a little bit of this person's story, and how you see how they're all interconnected. And it's really well woven story. So what did you think then, Gemma, about narrative structure? What struck you about it as, like, what was engaging about the structure for you?
Yeah, I think Alice was right when she said that there's the right amount of each narrative. I never felt like I'd had too much of one or not enough of one. It always felt really balanced. And when I was leaving you guys messages earlier, I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen it done like this before, but I probably have, but I just don't think I've seen it done like this well before. So like this whole idea of someone telling their story to someone else, but that other person, so Margaret in this case, quite often feels like a spare part in the story, but she didn't here. She felt integral to it, and the way that her relationship with Vida developed over the book, I thought was really, really heartwarming, and I really grew to love Vida through Margaret and her interaction. So yeah, loved it.
Yeah.
Thought it was really, really
it was
well
really
done.
naturally done. I thought that Diane Setterfield will come back to writing it, but they did feel like two very distinct characters, which can be it's the same author, but it felt like two very distinct characters to me. So Katie, what do you think of the structure of the book? In like, obviously, you know, it's I think it's quite in your, as a writer yourself, how difficult do you think it is to pull off something like this, the way it's been done, the way it's been structured?
Yeah. I think it's quite hard when you have a story within a story, but I think it works so well. Like, I really enjoy a story within a story. And I think as well, because I really love all the Bronte references in the 13th Tale, and it does kind of put me in mind of Wuthering Heights and that sort of like story within a story. And when you have a story within a story, like, you have so many layers of narrative unreliability that how do you know what's true? Yeah. Which I think is really fun in a Gothic novel or something that's atmospheric in the way the 13th Tale is, because it's so hard to actually get at the truth, because you have these two layers of first person narratives, and Vida spends lots of time lying, and that's all like misleading Margaret, I suppose, which is really fun. So actually, and then you get, you know, Hester's diary later and stuff. So there's lots of like different ways of telling a story within that, I guess, which I really like, and I really enjoy that. And I think also because sometimes the problem with a story within a story is that you don't believe that someone telling a story of their life would tell it in the way that is fun to read a novel. But because Vida Winter is an author, you definitely believe that she would tell the story of her life like that. So I think that just kind of really works. I just think it's a really fun way of doing it.
It was very natural, and then, like, as you say, it's kind of that nod to that. That's quite you're talking about the Brontes, and I just finished, because I read for Victober, I read The Tenth of Wildfell Hall, and and that structure is, if anyone's read it, but we've got several voices sort of telling the story, and there is a story within a story type of thing going on, and definitely in Wuthering Heights, of course, you've got these different narrators and unreliable narrators as well. So really interesting. So we've got Paris, Texas has said, I read it a couple of years ago on holiday and I liked it, but I wanted to reread it because I did not remember much of the details. I liked it all over again, which is good. That's good. And Zach, if you're asking Zach why it was a 2.25, first 20% was 5 stars, last 20% was 1 star, middle was a steep decline. Oh, Zach. Oh, what? Interesting. Oh no, because actually for me it ramped up. Like, it just, I was just getting more and more invested in the story. So that's interesting. I wonder if it's to do with plot, with character. Just interested to know. Andy Hart's books. I have read this twice, loved it both times. Yes. And interestingly, as Gemma said, and you've read it multiple times, Katie, she wanted to go back as soon as she found out the twist and start reading it again.
It's really good to reread, because actually there's so many massive clues. And there's so many little fun bits and pieces you can put together once you know the twist. It's a really, really fun one to reread. It's very clever. It's very cleverly done.
Yeah.
That's it. And trying to see if these things were glaring obvious. Kind of when Margaret kind of figures everything out. We'll talk about it a bit. But when she figured everything out, that moment when she did, and she's suddenly going, oh, and putting all these things together. It felt like an M. Night Shyamalan film, you know, when it's like the Sixth Sense, when he suddenly, I see dead people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, suddenly realising, oh my gosh, all of this stuff.
Yes, how did I not see that?
It was really, really good. And then suddenly, when she kind of knew, and she said she noted, and she said that she'd been telling you all along, and you kind of going, oh, what did she know? So it was really the tension and the suspense were built so well for me. I was all in. So when Zach's like middle of it, steep decline, I was like, no, for me it was just ramping up and up and up. Okay. Berna says the structuring of the plot was the element that I remember I was most impressed with. Very impressive, actually. Where are we? Of that point, much fun to FOMO read this one. Of which point? Sorry, I think I've misunderstood part of it. Maybe Julie, I'm not quite sure if you want to explain that comment a little bit more. Now, where were we? We're going to talk about the writing in general. I thought, just the writing, she even says at one point, and she talks about words and how powerful words are. Right, this is Margaret talking, I believe, at one point, and just talking about I'm trying to remember the little quote for it, and she says something about words being like a web of silk that tie you in, and the actual writing within the book was very much like that for me. The sort of the atmospheric description, the characterization. I just found it just mesmerizing to read. Really did. What did you think of it, Gemma? The writing?
Yeah, well, I was a little bit trepidatious going in because I have read another book by Diane Setterfield that I did not like, and that was Bellman and Black. Again, the writing was very beautiful, but the plot was pretty dull. So I was a bit like, oh, going in. But I think, like you say, because there were so many references to reading and books and things that just completely married with my own thoughts on subjects, it just sucked me in from the beginning. And then as soon as the plot took off, that was it. I was in it for the long haul. So yeah, I think she did a really good job of like laying out her stall in those first few chapters, ready to just completely take me by storm for the rest of the book. So well done.
Yeah, and I found that quote about words. Says, there is something about words, in expert hands manipulated deftly, they take you prisoner. Wind themselves around your limbs like spider silk, and when you are so enthralled you cannot move, they pierce your skin, enter your blood, numb your thoughts. Inside you, they work their magic.
Which is exactly what he's doing.
That's exactly. Yeah. It's so meta, isn't it? It's like this real meta comments about books and writing, and she's doing all of these things so well. What did you think of the writing, Alice?
I just think it just had me from like the opening sentence onwards. I just thought this is so like this. It's the sort of writing where you feel like you ought to be underlining things and like you'd be underlining every sentence, but I don't underline things. And I was like, I really want to remember some of these quotes, but I can't stop reading to write them down. So I haven't written anything down, but just I thought it was the perfect combination of the sort of writing that just makes you want to keep reading, but also like it just felt like really good writing. Like the descriptions, I felt like I was there in the places. All of the places just seemed so real and atmospheric to me, and also so did the characters. And I do love a first-person narrative, so I love that. Like, I thought Margaret's narrative voice was just really excellent. I really liked how she started it off. I liked how she was sort of trying to work the narrative as well as like Vida pulling the strings. Yeah, I just thought it was excellent writing.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And then and Katie, obviously Katie, you love the writing in the book.
Yeah, I just think she's a great writer. And her writing is, I feel like her writing is that nice mix of like, it is lyrical and it is beautiful and there are bits that are quotable, but also like it's there to give you a very, very good plot. So it never like gets in the way of actually all the fantastic, interesting plot stuff that's going on. Like it's always, really helps you get into the plot and the characters and the settings, even though there are also like quotable bits as well. Yeah, I just think the writing's great. And I've read all three of her books, which I really like. But I think, Bellman Black is definitely the least accessible of her books. Once Upon a River is really good too, and is probably like feels more natural to read after the 13th Tale. But her writing is always just really, really beautiful and really clever, I think.
Yeah, because I was going to ask if you'd read the other books, because I'm definitely interested now in reading Once Upon a River. Definitely, I didn't know about the other book actually. Is this her first book? You know, I don't know.
So 13th Tale was first, then Bellman and Black, then Once Upon a River came out. I was about to say a few years ago. It was probably like 4 years ago now. But they're really good.
I'm really interested in reading more by her. So Zach said the characters were definitely the problem. Starting with nobody doing anything about Charlie when he was a kid. We'll get into all of this actually. It's really, I just found it really fascinating from a sort of almost psychological perspective. Really. Then letting the twins do whatever they wanted when they were kids. That is, I mean, I can see how that'd be a frustrating thing to read. Actually, you can see how it could be frustrating to read like that. And Charlie says, Jack, the quote you're referencing is my favourite one. Ah, wonderful. Is that the one about words, Charlie? Because I've done a couple now. I'll probably do a few more before.
Yeah, I think it was that one. Yeah.
Yeah, the spider silk one, yeah. Jim, hi Jim, how are you? It says, Jim's book reading stuff. For at 8 o'clock, the world came to an end. It was reading time. Yes.
I remember that quote because that is my life. That is my actual life. The kids go to bed and I'm like, right, see ya.
I felt very seen. Very seen by this book.
Yeah.
I loved it when Margaret picks up Vida Winter's book, The 13th Tale, for the first time, and she takes it to bed, and she says, because like my background is in sort of education, and my specialism is reading. And when I did my master's in education, talked about reading and the sort of phases and stages of reading that children go through. And there's a stage of reading children go through called it's something like the age of book devouring in Sweden, and it's basically that phase you get into where you discover that you're decoding you can read words, so you're not struggling with that anymore, and you suddenly discover something that just hooks you in and you can't stop reading, and you just read and no other stage in your reading life is ever like that. And what she says is, when she picks up the 13th Tale and she's in bed, she says, when I was a child, books for everything, and so there is in me always a nostalgic yearning for the lost pleasure of books. And I think, like, as an adult reader, that when she's saying that lost pleasure of books, I don't think we ever get to that extent that we had when we were younger readers. And she says it's not a yearning that one ever expects to be fulfilled. And during this time, those days when I read all day and half the night, when I slept under a counterpane strewn with books, when my sleep was black and dreamless and passed in a flash, and I woke to read again, the lost joys of reading returned to me. And I think that's when she reads the book for the first time, when she reads Vida Winter's book, she says that, and it just struck me right here, because I thought, oh yes, they're talking about that age of book devouring and like rediscovering it as an adult because you found a book that's made you feel that way again, which I think we can all identify with as a reader. So Zach said, nobody took any responsibility, they just let themselves in the house rot. Yes, they were kind of. I kind of don't agree completely there, because I think we'll get into the Mrs. and John the Dig, but I think the Mrs. just felt like she kind of just couldn't towards the end. It's not that she didn't want to take responsibility. I felt like she just became incapable of it. Jim says, Once Upon a River was my favourite from the books I read last year. And Charlie says, I liked Once Upon a River but didn't love Bellman and Black. Seems to be a...
Yeah, I do have Once Upon a River on my shelf, so I will get to it at some point.
And she has the most beautiful covers on her books. Once Upon a River and the 13th Tale. Beautiful. Okay.
Once Upon a River is like the sort of bridge between. So if you read the 13th Tale and Bellman and Black, they're really, really, really different, and it feels strange that they're by the same person. And then Once Upon a River is sort of like halfway between the two in style and theme. So yeah.
Intrigued.
That's probably an easier one.
Is that one about, because I roughly know, is it set on the Thames? Is there like something?
That's Once Upon a River, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So is it set in Victorian times?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the elements of the story. We're going to start though with Angelfield House, because that setting was like a character in itself, much like in the Bronte books. Definitely in Wuthering Heights sticks out in my mind for that. So yeah, in terms of how Diane Setterfield creates this setting and uses this setting, what did you think of it, Katie? The sort of the Angelfield House itself as a setting.
Yeah, I feel like it feels really vivid and realised, like as a place that has its own atmosphere and sort of like is very isolated and kind of crumbling, which is just really interesting in itself. And especially I think because the 13th Tale is so much like a homage to all like Victorian literature and to the Brontes, it does really make me think of Thornfield Hall and Wuthering Heights and like those old houses in Victorian novels that are like actually quite worn out and are like where things are not quite right, and also they're their sort of own communities, so they can be really, really isolated, which is how Angelfield ends up. And also I just think the name of Angelfield House, in this house that is like full of lots of misery and drama and chaos and isn't like angelic in any way, I always find very entertaining.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that actually, but that makes complete. But also this kind of idea, like in Wuthering Heights in particular, where the characters that live within the house, the house is mirroring them and their lives.
Yeah.
And like you say, this kind of dilapidated house, this chaotic house, this house is falling into disrepair. It's like this family that was once like a very, like, you know, well-to-do family is just falling into disrepair, isn't it? So Alice, you were really keen to talk about the setting as well, because you said like it felt like, you know, really central part of it for you. So what did you think of it?
Yeah, and I just think that that's another thing that I really love in books. Like, it puts me in mind of Rebecca as well, Manderley, and the, like, without any spoiler, I suppose, in both you get like a juxtaposition of like the thought of the house now in present times versus like what it was as we're being told about it. I've tried to say that as obliquely as possible to not spoiler Rebecca. But yeah, can we go into spoilers for this book, would you say?
We can. I've got my spoiler warning ticker tape along the bottom. So
well, I thought like, although we were already being told quite early on that like this fire had happened, like teaser of it, it was still quite shocking to then visit Angelfield House as it is now, or as it is when Margaret's writing the story. And I really enjoyed, although I could understand why she kept going, because she was kind of drawn to it, wasn't she? But like the time that Margaret spent there in the ruins of the house were just as interesting to me as what had been happening in Angelfield House in the past. And that contrast between the two I found super interesting.
So actually, when you were saying about her returning to, it just suddenly struck me, actually, those parts of it, and knowing it was this burnt out shell and wondering how that happens, and that was another good bit of suspense building, wasn't it? Just having this, like, knowing this was about to happen, but not knowing how this happens or when it happens. And Gemma, what did you think of the setting?
Yeah, I mean, just echoing what you guys have said, really. I think the way sort of like the house decayed as the family decayed was like really well done. Like, the worse the family got, the worse the house got. And I was like, oh. But I really liked the scene when Margaret first visited the house and she came at it from like a weird angle and it didn't look dilapidated or burnt out at all. She thought, can you remember that scene? And like, it wasn't until she saw it from like a different angle that she realized that there weren't actually any panes in the windows and, you know, things like that. And I thought that was just like really well done. But yeah, it was just spooky, wasn't it? It was just a spooky house with like dark corners, and you can just imagine like the dirt like in the corners all like creeping out. Oh, just loved it. I love a spooky house.
And she got a real jump scare in there as well, didn't she? So we'll talk about when we come round to that the characters and stuff. Jim said something. Oh, Lynn's here. Hi, Lynn. Sorry, I just got rid of my guests. really enjoyed this one. Yeah, kick them out so you can join our live. Great. Jim's books, reading and stuff. So Jim has said, now actually, I should have spoken to you about this one, Alice. I wonder if there's an Agatha Christie connection because of Harrogate. So Vida Winter definitely strikes me as an Agatha Christie type of book. What did you think of that? Did you think of that connection?
I mean, that came to my mind like when at the beginning when she's saying how Vida Winter's such a prolific writer, blah 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 blah. I was like, it's Agatha Christie, which just made me love it even more. But I just thought that was me projecting onto it until Jim said that.
I don't think it was you projecting, because I kind of when they were talking about how successful she was and like greatest living author and you know, very elusive and that kind of thing, I was just thinking but yeah, it kind of made me think a bit of Agatha Christie as well, a little bit. Not that I don't know if she's elusive, but there are mysteries about Christie herself, aren't there? So as we know. Gareth, hi guys. Hi Gareth. I haven't read the book but love hearing you chat about it. Well, there's going to be huge spoilers coming up, Gareth, if you do want to read the book, and we'd like recommend you read the book. So Verna, if anyone asks me, this book is one of the books in which the house is like a character, and Rebecca is one other one. Yes, definitely. Zach, for context, The Tent of Wildflower Hall is my favourite classic, 5 stars. I loved it too. I found my first time reading it this year. Jane Eyre was fine, 3.75 stars. I DNF Wuthering Heights at 10%. A lot of people don't like Wuthering Heights. I love it. I'm a big fan of Wuthering Heights, and a lot of people don't. Have we got Wuthering Heights fans here? Of course, Katie, I imagine. Yes.
Yeah.
Are you a fan, Alice?
No, I don't like it.
Because I saw you shaking your head. Sorry, that's what I had to say.
Oh, that's interesting, because I would have said that you might not like the 13th Tale if you don't like Wuthering Heights, because the family in the 13th Tale, like at Angelfield, is dysfunctional in a very similar way to Wuthering Heights. So I feel like if you hate in Wuthering Heights that everyone is so awful, I feel like you're probably not going to like the 13th Tale. So it's really interesting that you don't like Wuthering Heights, but you did really enjoy the 13th Tale.
Yeah. I don't like.
Yeah, no, exactly. Lots of parallels between them and between families.
Yeah.
Really. So, when did you last read Wuthering Heights, Alice? Just put it out there.
It was like the first classic that I read, so a long time ago. But I'm still not ready to reread it because I just don't like any.
It's like me with Tess of the D'Urbervilles.
That's such a good book, Jack. You need to reread it.
Wow. Well, this is the thing. Like Wuthering Heights, I think was the first classic I loved, and I read at A level, and I have my A level annotated copy still, and I haven't reread it in a number of years, but I've read it a few times. And I love Wuthering Heights. It just takes me back to that first time I read it, and just the atmosphere that was built, everything. I loved it. Tess of the D'Urbervilles put me off Hardy for 30 years. But
Wuthering Heights put me off classics for at least 10-15 years.
What I would say to you though, Alice, is 17-year-old me didn't know what she liked. I have since become a huge fan of a lot of the classics that I really didn't like when I was younger. So you should try it again.
The problem is, right, bear with me here, the Kate Bush song Wuthering Heights is so amazing that I thought the book was going to be equally as amazing, and it just doesn't live up to the song for me.
Alice,
I love this. I think exactly, Alice, for goodness. But the song is amazing. It's one of my favourites. But there's a really good ukulele version of it, which is worth listening to. Yeah, try. I might put a link to it in the description box later. You can have a look at it. It's great. Okay. Berna says, as an architect, books with remarkable houses always interest me.
I don't know,
Berna, yeah, Berna's like, I was going to say, Berna, have a little, if you could put a comment, like how sort of, like, could you imagine like the house, like as from an architect's point of view, how well is it described, and sort of the, because I just felt it was so vivid for me. It was wonderful. Jane says, love the houses. Vida's too, with all the furnishings. Yes. Well, Vida's house is interesting, actually. And the gardens are wonderful too. Very atmospheric at night, vividly described. Yeah.
And obviously Jane is Alice's mum, right?
That is my mum, yeah.
Say hi, Alice's mum.
Oh, yes,
we love you.
Hey, Mum.
Completely forgot, but yes, hi, Alice's mum. Lynn, I don't like Wuthering Heights either. Struggle to finish it. I'm with you, Alice.
No,
I mean, it's a very divisive book.
It's definitely a Marmite book for sure.
I think it's that whole, it's a love story. It's not a love story. Like, I think for a lot of people, it was that going into it thinking it, and it's like, it's really not. And if you go into expecting that, I think, I'm not saying that's the reason that Alice doesn't like it or Lynn doesn't like it, but I know that there was a big thing about people going, it's not a love story. It's like, no, it's not.
And it is also, it's a really weird book. Like the narrative structure is very odd, and following like one generation for half the book and then the next generation for the next half, and like all the chaotic, really odd behavior. Like it is a really strange book. And I kind of think it's genius, but I also totally understand why people don't like it.
Yeah, I can get why people don't like it as well. And I think
I thought it was going to be all Kathy and ghosts at the window. This is Kate Bush's fault again, but it wasn't.
We have to blame Kate Bush.
I do have a problem with the Kate Bush song because it's not a very good reflection of the book, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. It's nothing like the book.
We're gonna have to
She
Every
do,
time I
misled
listen to
me.
it, I'm like,
She
the
told me
whole
there
point
was
is that
gonna be
Kathy
lots
isn't
of fun.
jealous.
I think we're going to have to do, I feel like at some point, maybe for Victober next year, Katie, you should do like one of those debate videos, live debate.
Yeah, Wuthering Heights battle.
I think it would be great. Yeah, Wuthering Heights battle. Paris, Texas. Love the narrative structure and the writing in Wuthering Heights, but I can't stand the characters. But I can't stand the characters.
Yeah, that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Exactly. And also very similar to actually the characters within this book. I did love a lot of the characters in this book actually in the 13th Tale. There are a lot of lovable characters within the book, but there are lots of people who are just actually quite chilling and sinister. I tried to buddy read Wuthering Heights with my mum. She independently did exactly the same thing. Very similar taste then. Gareth says, loves the Kate Bush mention. Yes, actually, Gareth and I are in a group where we're listening to all David Bowie's back catalogue. I think Gareth and I have got quite behind it, but we were doing a single David Bowie album in chronological order because he's got 26 studio albums every 2 weeks for a year. And we were like, this is so fun, let's do a deep dive. We might be doing a deep dive into Kate Bush. So if anyone's really interested in that, that might be one of our, like, we're not decided fully yet, but going to do that. Kate Bush's back catalogue. Lynn, I love the Pupini sisters version of Wuthering Heights. Oh, I don't know that.
I know.
Is that a cover version of the song? I'll have to look it up, Lynn. I'll have to look it up. Jim, Wuthering Heights was my first Bronte novel. I really should reread it. Jamaica Inn had the windswept moors too. Yes, Jamaica. Yes, it's lovely. As a kid, I'd spend summers in West Yorkshire. My father was from Halifax, Yorkshire. I've never stopped off. I've travelled through it. I've never stopped off in Yorkshire.
Oh, you should.
I feel like that's something I need to remedy in my life. Berna, I do not like Wuthering Heights much either, and the reason the 13th Tale is not a favourite is because the characters aren't likeable for the same reason, really. Yeah. And Gareth said, "Yep, Kate Bush deep dive next year." Getting a bit off track, but yeah. Right, getting into the back to the book. I mentioned it a few times, but the storytelling, books and reading as a theme throughout. We've just talked about our love for that, but does anyone want to say anything about it here as well, particularly sort of the references to books?
One thing that surprised me quite a lot was that it gave like a full spoiler-filled synopsis of Jane Eyre.
Yes.
I was like, Christ. I was like, I have read it. It was a while ago. I hadn't remembered that level of detail, but I won't need to read it for a few years now because I've had it before.
I guess so. There's so much stuff in the plot of the 13th Tale that is so good because it's a different version of Jane Eyre. So I guess if you don't know the story of Jane Eyre, there's so many things that wouldn't work as well. So maybe she almost had to, but it does seem a shame to spoil it. But I just feel like it's full of Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights references constantly in a way that I just really, really, really enjoy.
Yeah. I definitely didn't pick up on them as much, I think, because I haven't read them in so long. But yeah.
No, it was really wonderful. I just loved the whole, like I said, talking about the reading and what it meant to Margaret as a character and the way, and also Vida, and the sort of just you constantly have quotes about, like you said, it's eminently quotable. But she says when she's meeting Vida for the first time, and she goes into the library and she says, "What better way to get to know someone than looking at their choice of books?" I was like, yes, exactly.
I always do
kind
that.
of when you see yes. Yeah, when I see someone reading a book I love, I'm like, oh, that's a nice person.
I do it with Booktube as well, though. Do you? When people are sitting in front of their bookshelves, I'm like, what have they got? I'm like, oh, yeah, they're a me person, or oh no.
I'm like, oh, I see an Agatha Christie shelf. Yeah, this person.
Subscribe, yeah, get a sub. Yeah, it's like when people say they've got books that you love. It's like a book recommending a person to you, basically. Margaret Lee, let's get on to the actual characters. So Margaret Lee was our narrator. What did we think of her as a character? Does anyone want to kick off with that? Did we like her?
You, Jack.
I'll kick off then. I'm trying to be a good host, but I'll kick off. Well, Margaret Lee, for me, initially I found her, I didn't warm to her to start with. But I think she was quite a a damaged character, obviously, from the beginning, and she's got her own sort of trauma and things that are haunting her, you know, her sort of past and everything that she's you know, we discover that, and these are massive spoilers, everybody, as if I haven't said spoilers a million times, but she discovers that she's a twin and her twin died. And so she's living in this whole situation where she's just kind of like losing herself in books. But her life, when she's talking about her upbringing in the bookshop and the way what her life is in the bookshop, I was just thinking, amazing. Growing up in a bookshop, and every evening that's all they do is just sit and read the books. And the bookshop is just, that's not how they make their money. They're just kind of looking after and curating these books, and I love that part of it. But in terms of her as a sort of, I mean, she's the main character really, because she's, for me, I know Vida's like one of the other characters there, but Margaret for me is obviously, she's discovering as much about herself and her own story and her own background as she's discovering Vida's, and there's this like mirroring. But as she becomes more entwined in Vida's story, I warmed to her a bit more when she started interacting more with the other characters. So I don't know how anyone else felt about her. So what did you think about her, Gemma?
Yeah, no, I would say the same. I think she grew as a character through the book, and so I grew to love her more because she started to I don't know, develop as a person. She felt almost a bit like an empty shell at the beginning, because she, like, obviously she was missing her twin, and she felt like adrift, I suppose, from the world, and she had this crappy relationship with her mother. And so I thought it was really nice that she built this relationship with Vida, and she sort of grew. And I have to say, the bit at the end when Vida she says something along the lines of, "I'll tell your sister to wait for you," or something like that. I can't remember the exact line. I was like, oh. And just like gave her sort of that freedom at the end, that sort of closure that she needed. I thought it was so well done. So well done. So yeah, I would say the same. I grew to love her as the book went on.
And also that part about her being a twin, I never got to the bottom of the fact that, was it just coincidence? Obviously, Vida Winter didn't know she had a twin. Who would know that?
So there's that bit about she wrote that. There's that bit about she wrote that essay once about, I can't remember about twins or about siblings, that Vida had read, and she was like, I knew that you understood about siblings and twins, and maybe she didn't know why, but she knew that Margaret like got it somehow. I don't know. Yeah, I really like Margaret as a character. I think especially when I was a teenager and a bit angsty, and Margaret's like a, you know, solitary, lonely person who only reads classics, and I just very much identified with that when I was 15. So like I just warmed to Margaret immediately. But yeah, I feel like you get to know her better as the book goes on, and you see her develop in a way that I really love.
Yeah, I felt that. Did you like Margaret, Alice?
Yeah, I was with Margaret from minute one. She's this like the ultimate bookworm, isn't she? She's been hiding herself away in books, like avoiding her own trauma and life, by just plowing her way through an entire bookshop of books. Respect Margaret.
Yes,
and I love that she was like, she felt that she would read those what were they called? They were kind of like these record books, the books of like people's lives, because she wanted to sort of keep those people alive in a way, because otherwise they're just these forgotten lines in books. And yeah, I love that aspect of her character. I thought it was wonderful. Let's see, where are we? Apparently, yes, a cover version, very Boogie Woogie Company guy. Ooh, so we'll have to look that up. I'm going to put these things in the chat after, in the description box after, if anyone wants to go.
I have absolutely no idea what you guys are talking about.
Paris, Texas says, I don't mind an unlikable character, but literally every character is despicable in Wuthering Heights.
Except for Hareton. Hareton's the one nice person in Wuthering Heights.
Hareton, yes. That's true. Jim says, don't forget to boot the like button. Thank you, Jim. Yes.
True.
Boot the like button, everybody. Zach, let's see, this is not coming up, these comments. I'm pressing them, but they're not arriving on the screen. Oh, we go. I noticed when Hester was introduced, it said, without haste and without rest, which is an Anna Karenina quote.
Is it?
Interesting. Not read it.
Not really?
I read War and Peace. But interesting. Jim, tragedy alters everything. I was born and the woman in the wedding photo disappeared. Margaret Lee. Yes. Yeah. It's kind of that whole background to her, that like finding out her own background, feeling like there was always something missing, discovering this birth certificate and everything. Yeah, interesting. Zach, put simply, harshly, letting dead people ruin your life is ridiculous.
Oh, Zach! That is harsh.
Yes. Simply but harshly,
You did
that
say
is
that.
harsh. But yes, I'm going to move on from Margaret to Vida. So we have to talk about Vida Winter. I didn't know whether to put Vida a bit further down and talk about other characters first, or talk about Vida, because Vida's kind of just a vehicle for all the other characters to start with. Also, you believe she's telling her own story, but throughout the whole first initial parts of the story, it's like you think she's like, I don't know, I'm not going to get into it without saying like about the spoiler, but the fact that she's talking about Adeline and Emmeline, the twins. Actually, I'm going to put their family first. I think let's talk about the Angelfield family first, and then we'll talk about Vida, because I think otherwise it's going to be back and forth. The Angelfield family, which is this huge dysfunctional family that just starts to decline, it seems, almost from that generation, which is George and Matilde, who are Isabel and Charlie's parents. And is with Matilde's death, when Isabel is born, George locks himself away, and Charlie, I don't know how feral he was before, but he becomes this feral child, quite sociopathic child. And then Isabel, kind of the missus, does the thing where she dumps the baby into George's arms to try and get him to take an interest in his children and everything. But that whole background of this, you see this sort of generational decline of this family, I thought was really well done. But they were really chilling family, I thought they were really psychological, like a psychological thriller. It was really chilling, especially when I didn't expect Isabel to be like Charlie initially. I just thought she was going to be this the opposite of him, like the golden child, the sweetness and light one, but actually she was really dark. What did everyone else think of Angelfield? So I think I'll start with you, Katie, the Angelfield family.
Yeah, I think they're fascinating, and they are like all kind of, well, a lot of them are awful, but in a very interesting way, which does always make me think of Wuthering Heights. And I think especially the like Isabel Charlie stuff makes me think a lot of Wuthering Heights. And I feel like the dysfunctional nature of the family and like the increasingly dysfunctional nature of the family is so well drawn and is so like atmospheric to read about. I find it really, really fascinating.
Yeah, and like they're just such a psychologically fascinating family, because I was really interested in the Charlie Isabel story from the start, about how, because I did find them really chilling, and then we moved on from them to Emmeline and Adeline, and they were really interesting in yet another different type of way, but still equally in a very twisted way. So yeah, what about your thoughts on the family, Gemma?
Yeah, I agree. I love a multi-generational saga, as some of you will know. So like to have all of that background, I thought was brilliant. So you could just see like the creepiness almost intensifying with every generation. Charlie as a character, I loved. Like loved to hate sort of situation. I thought he was just really interesting, like, and really freaky, like the way he carved Isabel's name on like his leg bone. I was like, you are.
That's very Heathcliff, isn't it?
It is very Heathcliff. Maybe that's why I loved him so much. But yeah, I just
he was really dark.
Yeah, and then the twins.
So like, what happened with him in the end as well, when when they broke into the room thinking he was still in there and he wasn't, and he'd gone, and the state of the place and the way he'd left it, and then we find out what actually did happen to him in the end, because he's missing, presumed dead, and no one knows what happened. But actually, Vida did know what happened to him because she found him.
Yeah.
She didn't tell anyone. Yeah, they were fascinating. What about for you, Alice?
Yeah, I think my thoughts have pretty much been said, but they were just a whole new level of like terrible, weren't they? But like in a really good way, a really intriguing way. And like every time the story was coming back to them, you just wanted the story to come back to them to find out more and to see what happened next in this like terrible family. Like honestly, those twins didn't really stand a chance, did they? They were kind of, oh yeah, I've turned up with some twins and we'll just not raise them at all. We'll just leave them to their own devices and see what happens.
And that kind
It's
of
really
like unhealthy tendency they all have on each other, like it's just so psychologically interesting and scary.
And I found the twins when they were doing stuff, you know, when they were breaking into people's houses, and then when they took the baby, I was like almost reading it like this, just some of the things it just made me gasp
like
out
the
loud.
little,
I was like waiting for the
little details, like the twin language and stuff, that they just had their whole own little world, didn't they? That was just
they're really interesting characters. And then as like, because I know earlier on Zach mentioned sort of, you know, the fact that no one was sort of trying to take care of them. But of course, actually, when I'm going to get on to the next characters to talk about who were really fascinating, and that was the Mrs. and John the Dig. Because for me, they wanted to take care of them, or they wanted some semblance of normality. But by the time the twins come along, they're just incapable. The Mrs. is certainly incapable because she's really getting on, and she didn't get to tell part of the story, but is she kind of a bit Nelly Dean? You know, but she's I really liked her as a character. I loved him as a character. I thought he was fascinating, John Digg, and the fact that they had that. If they had ever known about it, they really should have been married. Like they were an old married couple that never married. I just thought that was and the fact that when they found Vida, that their thing was just to wash her, take care of her, make sure she had a home and she was fed. So, you know, there were people trying, whether they were capable of it or not. Raising these children is another matter.
Well, clearly not.
Yeah, exactly. But they did care, but it was just, and they did love them in their own way. But I just felt, you know, did anyone else feel that? The kind of like they did love the children.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
But when he got his garden destroyed, the topiary garden, it was hacked to pieces.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's jumping ahead a little bit, but later on when we find out a little bit about Adeline, that was one of the things that made me think that she was really unhinged. the destruction of the garden. It's one of those things that was just done out of pure malice. Like,
And actually, we'll talk about that as well when we find out, like you said, a bit more about Adeline. But I had this constant cognitive conflict with these characters, the way they were behaving, the twins in particular, and the way that, as it was back and forth, I was like, these are children who are non-verbal, and this is my teaching background coming in. These are children who are non-verbal. This one's become a really famous author. How has this happened? You know, and that kind of like my head, and as I was going through. And then when she destroys the topiary garden and she's in a rage, and then later on John shows her how to trim the hedges and make them into these things. I was like, why is she doing that if she destroyed his garden? So it was these little moments of conflict and little clues, I suppose, throughout the book, that when the reveal happened, I was like, that's what's happened here. And then talking about these children and their development, Hester, the governess, I think a very intriguing character, like a woman who is clearly hugely intelligent, and basically she reads a lot and she's got her own sort of theories about everything. and she manipulates the doctor, doesn't she, into doing this experiment and making him think it's his idea, which I thought was quite deftly done and quite funny. But the experiment, so we're talking about these twins, it kind of, there must have been, like, it feels like something that may well have been a reality, one of those horrible experiments that was done years and years ago on psychological experiments that might have been done on twins. But what did everybody think of Hester and the experiments? Because Alice, you're interested in the idea of the twin thing, right? So what did you think of that part of the book?
I thought that they're, you know, I've always found twins pretty fascinating. Like how could you ever uncover like what is going on with twins? You couldn't really, could you? So it just fascinates me. But like Hester and the Doctor are kind of, well, they are taking that too far, aren't they? Like, can we like fundamentally change these twins, basically? But I do think Hester kind of meant well. Like, is that a wrong thing to say? I feel like she was actually coming from a place of wanting to help the twins to like function as like more human characters rather than the way that they were functioning, which was obviously like bordering on psychotic.
Yeah, I feel like Hester definitely does mean well. Like, I feel like she is really trying, and it's really interesting because I sort of, in some ways, I really like her as a character, but also the experiment feels so cruel. But you also sort of understand that she feels she has to do something extreme because she tries other things and they don't work, and she kind of doesn't know what to do. And I think one of the things that's quite interesting about Hester is because she is really intelligent, and because this is at a point in time where like women aren't valued for their intelligence, she therefore, I think that means that she's almost like, she's so confident of her own intelligence that it doesn't occur to her that she might actually be wrong about this one thing. Because she spent so much time fighting against people who don't think she's clever, she's sort of like built up her own confidence. But that also means she can't always see when sometimes she might be wrong. So I feel like she's a really fascinating character. And because we get to see her diary and get to see like a closer look in her head as well, it's so interesting.
And actually, you're quite, when you say about her, like her hubris almost in conducting this experiment, and that she thinks she's so right about it, even to the point where when you read her diary and she starts to question, it is quite harsh, but no, we're doing the right thing, and she kind of almost sort of like blocks out what she's seeing happen to the twins because she's, in the name of what she believes to be right and what they're doing is right. And yeah, I think she was a really interesting character. And when she brought order to the house for the first time, the children were, you know, bathed, and well, at least Emmeline was bathed and clean, and she managed to get them onto a regular meal schedule and instill like a routine within the house and clean the house. And like, didn't she get the Mrs. Glasses and all sorts of things and sorted out the finances? Like, she seemed to be turning that whole house around, and it's very quickly, as soon as she goes, it creeps back in. All of the things disappear, all the things that she's put into place. What did you think of Hester then, Gemma?
Yeah, I really enjoyed her character. I think, sort of building on what Katie said, her want to be sort of experimental with the twins, I think came, and the distance that she went with that came from sort of this constant societal breakdown of her not being able to do that. So as soon as she got the opportunity, that sort of trumped everything else. Whereas had she grown up in a education system where she was given those opportunities, I think she would have spotted that what she was doing wasn't working. But because this was all new to her, and like she had a doctor listening to her, and she was, do you know what I mean? I think she then took it too far because it was like a novelty to her. So yeah, no, I thought she was
Did anyone else think that the body might be Hester?
Yeah.
You know, when they find the body, did anyone else think it might be Hester? Initially, I thought it was a nice red herring, like that she's gone but didn't find her, didn't know where she'd gone to and everything. That was interesting. And then we've got the other really interesting character, Aurelius Love, who I really liked. I just wanted to have cake with.
He's my favourite.
He's lovely, isn't he? And you just
Did
like,
anyone else
"Oh, I
picture
do."
him a bit like Hagrid?
Yes, he's a giant.
With his big coat and yeah. No.
He was wonderful, and his sort of introduction where he kind of surprises her in the ruin of Angelfield. I thought it was very well done, a real jump scare moment. And then he's like, "Oh my goodness," and he takes care of her, gives her cake. I love the cake aspect of it. And he just seems like he's just so like such a wonderful character, and then it becomes entwined. The fact that there's a moment when Vida Winter talks about side characters or additional characters when she's talking to Margaret, and she says something about like, don't get distracted by side characters or something along those lines. And when he was introduced, and then the woman with the boy and girl in the Angelfield in the village are introduced, of course they turn out to be related, which they didn't know about. Did anyone like sort of see those moments beforehand? Did anyone guess that he would be as key to this story as he was ahead of time?
I thought he was important from the introduction of him because he was too impressive a character to be completely random. If you know what I mean, like he is the sort of side character you could easily become distracted with, to relate back to the quote. And I found it very, very satisfying how his piece of the puzzle fitted into the wider picture and also to the other characters we were introduced to at like the ruins of Angelfield. It's very satisfying.
It's really interesting, and when because he tells her his story that he's a foundling, and it kind of links back to something like Vida says at the start of her story, and she says, so he talks about his beginning, and he doesn't know where he came from, but he was found by Mrs. Love on the doorstep, who's a foundling. And Vida Winter says, a birth is not really a beginning. Our lives at the start are not really our own, but only the continuation of someone else's story, which is exactly what he is. That it's like all these sort of links, but all of their stories, all of their births, all the things, they're just a continuation of each other's stories, and they're kind of web wound in together. But he was so lovely. I was just so pleased that it could be resolved for him in some way, and that he had a family at the end of it.
That little foundling story as well was like such another great little story within a story within a story. I just loved that like little backstory for him, but how unsatisfying he found his backstory, which is kind of the same as Margaret and her unsatisfying like the secrets in her family.
Connected, they really connected over that, didn't they?
And the fact that he's like, I love him. The fact that he's like the person who comes and interviews Vida in like that we hear about in like the first letter from Vida. It's just so satisfying, and especially because in that letter Vida basically says he didn't seem like he was a journalist, like his coat fit right or whatever. And later Margaret can't find anything about this article in this newspaper, and it's such a fun little like callback that he's been set up like since the very beginning, which I just really enjoyed.
It was a lovely little bit of a connection there, because he says that to her, and she's like thinks about it later. He's like, "Tell me that I just want to know the truth," or "Tell me the truth," because which is that the I can't remember the exact wording of it, but that was the line that stuck out in Vida Winter's head, and also then in Margaret's head, because he says something similar to her. Okay. I haven't got to Vida Winter yet, so I'm going to get to Vida. I think we'll get to Vida and then we'll do the twist, because I added that in as a card actually, just as because I thought we haven't talked about that. Vida, I just every time she was talking as a character, I was just enthralled by her, absolutely enthralled, and never quite sure what to believe from her. So how did everybody else? How did you feel about her as a character? What do you think of her, Katie?
Yeah, I think she's just fascinating. Like, she's really interesting and captivating, and especially because for so much of the story, like, you don't really know. You don't always like know. You don't know the truth behind what she's telling you. So I feel like it's so interesting to see her both in the narrative that she's telling, even when sometimes we're not sure when we're seeing her, but also to see her from Margaret's perspective in the present and kind of what she's like as a person, or the conversations they have about books and stuff. I just really, really enjoy.
Yeah, and I think they bounced off each other really well, and their developing relationship was really tender by the end of it. By the end of the book, it was really lovely. And Alice, what do you think of Vida or Agatha? Is she Agatha?
She didn't really turn out to be very Agatha-ish, but I can see the vibe.
Actually.
But I just feel like where, for me, Margaret was like the ultimate bookworm, Vida is like the ultimate storyteller, and I think that's why they fit together so well. Because like the mystery of her life was so interesting and fascinating to me, and the stories that she's told in the past that have been lies about her past, basically. Every time she's been interviewed, she's told these wild stories that are like just stories. And I just love as Katie said, the way you never really know whether she's telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Because how can you be sure when somebody whose business is telling stories, how can you know whether that story is the true story? I think it's a testament to Setterfield's writing that the author character in it is just so captivating. Like she really, I 100% believe that this woman was an author, because she was so, like, she just had me completely in her grip as she told this story to Margaret. Yeah, I just thought she was a brilliant creation for me.
I completely believed her though, all the way through, even though I knew she was unreliable. I knew that she lied. I believed everything she said. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
But you couldn't help but be sucked into that. She was so believable.
Yeah.
When I was reading it, the thing that always struck me as odd, and then it became, obviously, when we get to the twist, it became like, oh, that's why, was the constant, when she would refer to the twins as if they were separate people and then refer to herself. And I was like, why does she keep doing that? Because maybe it's just a weird narrative choice. Maybe it's her telling the story as the author, but then she starts to believe, talk about it because it is her story. So maybe she's so used to telling other people's stories, she's talking about herself as a separate entity. And then when the twist happens, like, that's what's going on here. Okay, so that it kind of, when the twist happened and the reveal happened, which was all about in a moment, and Margaret goes, like, her light bulb moment comes on and she realizes, and suddenly when it was revealed to me, I was just suddenly doing the Margaret thing, like, oh my gosh, all of those things just suddenly click, like clicked on for me. I thought it was very well done, and like you said, Gemma, I really want to go back and reread it now.
Yeah.
See those moments. Let's see a couple of comments. Let's see. Oh, this is really interesting. Where are we? I'll come back to Paris, Texas. Got a thing about the fire and Emmeline and everything else, but I'll come back to that in a moment. Zach says the misses in the dig meant well, but they were just enablers. Well, yeah, they were kind of enabling, yes. I just think they were just, I don't know. I mean, they weren't their parents. They were trying to fill this parental role, but they weren't really parents. And and they were also like not really able for it by the time the twins were older, I think. This is interesting. Paris, Texas. I kind of thought Vida killed Charlie. What did we think about what happened to Charlie? Any thoughts on it?
I think he killed himself.
I think he killed himself.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think he killed himself after the death of Isabel. And Jane very much enjoyed how Hester set to and did a massive clean up. Very satisfying. Yes.
Oh, it was.
Really satisfying. Completely agree. Zach, got to go. Hope I can be back soon. Bye, Zach. Thanks for joining us. Jane, Aurelius was great. Loved his treasure bag that he was found in. Yes, and the little clues. Constant cake was a bonus. Even Margaret couldn't resist. She couldn't resist that constant cake. Jim, so used was she to hiding the truth that it had become atrophied in her. Vida Winter. Yes, good quotes. Jim picked out some really good quotes, actually. I've seen
Speaking of the quotes
on it.
today.
As an aside, Jeffrey Archer, a writer of many fictitious stories, was convicted for perjury. Yes, he was.
Was he really?
Yes, he was. Yeah,
Oh, of course he was. Yes, Jeffrey Archer, the politician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went to prison, didn't he? Yeah, did go to prison. And so we come to the twist and the ending and the fire and everything else. So, you know, the biggest spoiler of all, of course. Who saw it coming when Vida Winter revealed that there was a third child in the house? Who saw it? Anybody?
Like really, really close to the reveal, yes, but not far enough away.
It's such a good twist, because I think it's one of those twists where it does feel like a massive surprise, but you're like, oh, of course, that's so obvious. You've told me it like 5 times and I haven't noticed. Like that bit where at the beginning Vida Winter says, my birth was a subplot. Her birth is not in the narrative she tells. And she says, I'm going to tell you a ghost story, because there's literally, the house is being like, you know, haunted by someone. And all the, do you think I'm fine to have Jane Eyre spoilers here too, considering that the 13th Tale spoils Jane Eyre?
I think so. Yeah, the 13th Tale spoiled it anyway. So.
Yeah, I think like the fact that it has so many Jane Eyre references in is basically like Diane Setterfield telling you there is someone else in this house that you don't know about. Like, I feel like it's such a great twist, because it is a really big surprise, but like it makes so much sense, and there have been so many clues that it doesn't feel like, oh, I could have never guessed that. Like, I just feel like it's so good. And whenever I've reread it, I found it really fun to be like, oh, there's a clue. Of course, it's really, really obvious when you know it. Like, there's so many things that lead you to that conclusion, which I just think is really, really fun.
I always find that really satisfying with, I don't know if you do, Alice, because you reread mysteries and stuff as well quite a lot, but there's one book I love for that is Emma, Jane Austen's Emma, and on every reread I just see how cleverly she's woven, and I won't, no spoilers for it, but there's like one of the plot twists, I suppose, is a twist that when she weaves that in, and rereading the book again, and this is why I'd really like to read 13th Tale at some point, is that satisfying, it was always here, this character said this, it was here, and you just see the genius of this construction of this narrative, and how well it's done. I just really satisfying. I'm just wondering if anyone in the comments noticed. So yeah, the reveal was wonderful, and then there were other twists. So the other twist being the fire, and which twins survived the fire. So what do we think about that?
I would love to know Katie's thoughts, having reread it 3 times. If you have more of an inkling of which twin survived or which twin didn't.
I think it is purposely so ambiguous in such a great way. But I feel like the last time I read it, my suspicion was that Adeline survives, not Emmeline, and that Vida takes care of Adeline like almost for Emmeline, because because she can't take care of Emmeline, who was the sister she loved, so she takes care of Adeline because Emmeline would have done. Like that's how I think I read it. But I feel like it's purposely very ambiguous in a way that is kind of great. Like, I quite like that you could take it either way, but I feel like it's sadder in a way if it was Adeline who survived and Vida takes care of her, and that I feel like the tone of the book, maybe that is what Diane Setterfield intended. I don't know, it's so good.
I think that would be, and also I suppose that kind of sinister moment when she realizes after that she's pulled her out of the fire and she looks over and she's like, uh-oh, who have I pulled out here? That was that was another of those really great, like, oh no moments. Let me see what else some people have said here. Where are we? Oh, Zach's back. Hello, Zach. Hester thought she'd seen a ghost. Yes, because that's what scares Hester off, isn't it? She sees
that was a massive clue. That was a massive clue.
Yeah, and the child that she kept seeing in the garden. Who's this child in the garden that's bunking off school? Being a typical teacher as well there. They should be in school. What are they doing? Yes. So I think we've kind of talked about this a lot. Now, I feel that we should now talk about the fact that if you like this book, you should try these books. And the first book I want to recommend is Katie's book, The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, because we've all read it and we don't want to give spoilers about it. So maybe Katie, do you want to talk about your book, the premise of your book a little bit?
Yeah,
so
sure.
If anyone's not read it, that'd be good.
So The Secrets of Hartwood Hall is set in the Victorian period, and it's about a governess called Margaret, who goes to her new position at a place called Hartwood Hall, which is slightly mysterious and gothic, and she's teaching this little boy who lives with his widowed mother, and things in the house are a bit weird, and then everything kind of goes on from there, and it's definitely like personally has lots of Bronte vibes in, and is very inspired by like Jane Eyre and The Tenant of Arthur Hall and Agnes Grey, and also very much like inspired by the 13th Tale, partly I think just because the 13th Tale is also like a Bronte inspired book, but also because I read and loved the 13th Tale so many years ago. And I think as a teenager, I used to read lots of classics and I always loved them, like as a reader, but that wasn't the kind of thing I wanted to write because they're really old books and times have changed. But when I read the 13th Tale, I was like, oh, this is the kind of book I would like to write. And so interesting. So one of the books I wrote that went out on submission to publishers and never got picked up and may never be published is a story within a story, like the 13th Tale. And I copied the structure and had fun with that. And Hartwood Hall was very differently inspired, but definitely I feel like I was very inspired by the 13th Tale, and I love like books inspired by the Brontes, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we'd all agree with the fact that actually when we were reading the 13th Tale, I could just see that sort of homage to this book that was within The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, actually, and I loved The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. I've got a review of it and I'll put that in the description box as well if anyone's interested who's not read it. It's spoiler free. But we all really love The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, and I feel like if you enjoyed the 13th Tale, do go and read it if you haven't already, because it's all of those elements that we've all talked about tonight that we've all loved are within The Secrets of Hartwood Hall as well. So I don't know if Gemma or Alice, you want to add anything about it.
I just think everyone should go out and read it.
Agreed.
Yeah. If you like the vibes of the 13th
definitely.
Tale, I think you'd also like the vibes of The Secrets of Hartwood Hall.
Definitely.
I think for me, because I read The Secrets of Hartwood Hall quite recently, I read it in September, and then I read the 13th Tale in October. Like, you can see so many parallels that perhaps I wouldn't have picked up if I'd read them far apart. So I'm quite glad that I did, because I'm like, oh yeah, I can see little bits of inspiration and little bits of like say, going back to Jane Eyre, which I hadn't read for a very, very long time, and now that I think about it in relation to Hartwood Hall, I'm like, oh yeah, I see how that's related. But yeah, love it. Perfect for this time of year as well, like spooky, gothic, gives you chills. Love that.
No, it's definitely one of I think all three of us have absolutely loved The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. So anyone in the FOMO book club, there was a read along of it. A few people joined Charlie's read along of it. Charlie and Charlie were doing a read along of it in September, but it's definitely one to pick up. So go out and pick up a copy of it. It's very, very good. And in terms of if you like this book, try these. So if you like Victorian literature and you've got a love for it, Secrets of Hartwood Hall and the 13th Tale are wonderful. But if you've not read the Victorian books that are the inspiration for these books, definitely obviously Jane Eyre, but what else would you say, Katie, to pick up?
I think Wuthering Heights as well.
The 13th Tale and the,
I think Wuthering Heights has a really big influence on the 13th Tale. And probably also, if you like the 13th Tale, other Victorian books by like Wilkie Collins and Mary Elizabeth Braddon, like the kind of sensation fiction, dramatic stuff. And I think, I know this isn't Victorian, but 20th century classic, I know we've mentioned Rebecca a few times. Like, I feel like if you like the 13th Tale, you'll find Rebecca really interesting. Rebecca is another book that is very much inspired by Jane Eyre. So if you like Jane Eyre, reading like lots of different books that are inspired by Jane Eyre in very different ways is quite fun, I think.
Yes, yeah, I could see that, and also because Rebecca was that our first book? No, it wasn't Jamaica Inn, because I read Rebecca just before I read Jamaica Inn for FOMO Book Club. But one thing I would say, if you like the atmosphere and the twists and the turns. And if you've never read Fingersmith by Sarah Waters,
Oh yeah,
I'd highly recommend. Yeah,
That's very nice.
absolutely. Absolutely loved that book as well, and very similar in vibe. In the beginning, you got the mysterious house, the strange goings on, the sort of person discovering it for the first time, and then there are so many twists and turns in that book. Absolutely, yeah, adored Fingersmith. So yeah, if anyone else out there as well in the chat has any recommendations based on this that we might like to read that we might not have read, or to put out, that would be great. Gemma, Alice, have you got any other recommendations? Oh, sorry, Katie, go ahead.
I was just going to add another one, which is, I don't know if you guys have read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I really liked that. Has a very similar structure in that it's a story within a story, older person telling a younger person the story of their life. And I loved The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo a lot, but I think one of the reasons why I loved it so much was because the structure really reminded me of the 13th Tale. It's like, but rather than being about books, it's about films. But that's just, that's one that you might like if you enjoyed the story within a story aspect that 13th Tale has.
Yeah, I completely second that, because that
I read that before this, and I thought it was like, I definitely could see the similarity. I thought at one point, hey, this is the same sort of plot as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, only better.
Yeah, and it is, and actually, because it's got all of those, got more gothic elements. Whereas I love The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. When we were talking earlier about, does anything else have this narrative structure? That's one book that popped into my head about it, actually, because of the younger person being told this person's life story, and there are connections that and or the way the whole book is. The story's being told by this person, they're deliberately withholding information that they only reveal later on. And you've also got the fact that, like you say, it's not about, Katie, it's about films. And I love that era, that like classic Hollywood era. So people like that, I think definitely that's a really good choice, actually.
And I feel like maybe
any
one
other
thing we haven't said about this book is that did this book feel quite timeless to people? Because I couldn't really work out exactly when it was there.
Yes.
And I like
trying to figure it out.
I have spent so much time trying to pinpoint exactly what it said, and I think it's very hard to do. But I really love the like timeless feel to it. Like it's just quite fun, and it sort of suits that like ghost story thing that Vida Winter has.
I completely agree. Yeah, I was constantly trying to pinpoint by the technology that was being used or by what was being said.
The books they mentioned.
Yeah, really well done. And like you say, that gives it that timeless feel, because then you can at any era pick it. It's not kind of been pigeonholed into a particular, era. And look and see what's in the comments about recommendations. Oh, and also just finishing off some thoughts about the twist. Just after fire, I thought it was Adeline, but Adeline really seemed to hate Vida, so in the end I thought it was Emmeline. Okay. Have you also read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo? Very similar. I read that first. This is much more gothic and so much better. Yes, because it's that, like you say, Alice. Like, oh, this is a better one because it's more gothic. It's got the elements that we love, and so much better. There's many similarities.
Being biased.
Lynn, Katie's book is really good. I'm not just saying that because she's here. I read it on audio. The narrator is excellent. I heard the audio as well.
The narrator is really good.
I did a sort of, you went to watch her do a bit, like record a bit.
I did, yeah. I went to like listen to some of it being recorded, which was really fun. And then I listened to the whole audiobook like just when the book was coming out, which was really nice and very surreal. But the audiobook is very, very good. I don't know, I don't know how the audio reader read it in exactly the way I intended, because I don't like. That must actually be very hard to do, but it did just feel like it was exactly what I like meant it to be, which was pretty cool.
Oh, that's wonderful. How satisfying. I can second it about the audiobook. I sort of did like physical and audio, because I quite often do both with my books, and wonderful audio. Jim, Goodreads suggests readers who enjoyed this also enjoyed Daphne du Maurier. Yes,
can confirm.
I've only read two, but confirm. Can confirm. Jane, if you love the storytelling aspect, you'll defo like Once Upon a River.
Okay.
Gareth said, this has been great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming on, Gareth.
Thanks, Gareth.
Jim says, Jane Eyre, Rebecca, Wuthering Heights, The Turn of the Screw, and The Woman in White. I've not read The Turn of the Screw.
No, I haven't. But I have read The Turn of the Key, which is supposed to be a homage to it a bit, isn't it? Or like influenced by it, I think.
The Moonstone.
I'm
I
sure
love the
David can always
Moonstone. The Moonstone. I do love this. I love a sensationalist. Also, I agree. This book is better than Evelyn Hugo because I think that their plot's similar, but they're very different in terms of atmosphere and you know what they're trying to do. And I like them both for the different periods that sort of stuff. Because I really enjoyed the sort of Hollywood gossipy aspects of the Evelyn Hugo. If you like Hester, try Keeper of Enchanted Rings by Charlie N. Holmberg. I've not heard of this.
I've not heard of that one.
No.
Another good one, if you like, the 13th Tale is The Key and the Lock by Beth Underdown, which is it's not a story within a story, but it has like two timelines. So you have like a late Victorian mystery and then like someone reflecting on what happened just after World War One, and that has similar like gothic big house. Something happened at the big house many years ago. What happened? How's it affecting now? Kind of feel to it, which and a few good twists. So that one reminds me of the 13th Tale a bit as well. That's a really good read.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm definitely good. I'm going to make note of all these recommendations from people, actually. To me, it felt like it was in the 1960s or 70s. Yeah. Possibly all the letter writing that had to happen back and forth to find things out, maybe. Yeah. Might be set in the 60s. Yeah. Gareth said that must have been amazing witnessing the audiobook being recorded.
Very cool.
Imagine, very cool, very surreal, I imagine. I thought it was set in the 1960s too. So yeah, everyone's sort of thinking about the 60s, 70s. Another book that is similar, has similarities, is Brat Farrar.
Oh, I've actually got that on my TBR.
Have you, Alice?
Yeah, by Josephine Tay.
Another one to try is The Bird's Nest by Shirley Jackson. Zach, what a great segue, because the next thing I want to talk about is our next book.
Oh, that's another fantastic book.
Yeah, that's our next read for FOMO Book Club. Yeah, we're going to be reading for November and December Shirley Jackson's We've Always Lived in the Castle, which I'm very excited about. So yeah, fantastic book, Katie. What do you like? Is it similar to this then? Because Zach seems to think it's one that if you've enjoyed 13th Tale, you'll enjoy.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think there's a sort of similar dysfunctional family in a isolated big house that they can't really look after kind of vibe to it. So I feel like, yeah, if you like a static tale, you will like We've Always Lived in the Castle, which is a very, very fantastic book.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm kind of hoping it's got like very sort of humorous but dark kind of vibes to it, kind of Arsenic and Old Lace style kind of. That's what I'm hoping for. I don't know what I'm going to get into, but that's what I'm hoping for. And then next book is that, and the next live will be over on Alice's channel. Is that right, Alice? This will be going in order. It would be on your channel in the end of December. We'll probably do that weird week in between Christmas and New Year. Maybe.
Yeah, could be then. Yeah.
Yeah. And last comments. November and December choices have to have castle in the title from Jim. Yeah, last year we did I Capture the Castle. It was our first book.
I hadn't even thought of that.
That's the rules.
And again, a really dysfunctional family living in a crumbling old house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed talking to all of you about this. Thank you so much. Katie, thank you for joining us. I was really pleased when you said you could come along. Good.
Thanks,
I was so
Katie.
pleased you said you could come along. Yeah, thanks everyone who came along for the chat in the live, and hopefully you'll join us for our next book. If you're not sure about the next 6 books we're doing, we selected them already, and I'll put the link in the description box to the video where you can see all 6 books for the next 12 months. And hopefully you'll join us. So say goodbye. Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.